On today's show, a recap of Canada's pre-tournament match against Switzerland ahead of the World Juniors and why Juraj Slafkovsky was benched in his most recent game against the Arizona Coyotes. All that and much more on Locked On NHL Prospects.
You are Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On this podcast, I break down everything prospects related for you 5 days a week, Monday to Friday. I'm Hattie Kalakash. I'm a scout and prospect analyst across multiple platforms, including this one. And on today's show, I'll be breaking down Team Canada's exhibition match against Switzerland ahead of the World Juniors. We've got a glimpse into Canada's potential forward lineup. And Connor Bedard was, of course, really impressive in that game. So I'll break that down for you first and foremost. Then in our second segment, I'll run you through a quick breakdown of the 2022 World Junior A Challenge, which ended in a gold medal win for Team USA. There were some interesting prospects at the tournament, both drafted and draft eligible. So I'll run you through the standouts to sort of break down who played well. And then finally, in our final segment, we'll look at Juraj Slafkovsky's last game against the Arizona Coyotes. We'll look at why he was benched and why the Canadians' first overall pick in the 2022 draft wasn't able to seize his opportunity, despite the fact that most of the Habs wingers are underperforming right now. But before we get into any of that, just remember to like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, and make sure to make us your first listen of the day on all of your favorite podcasting platforms. It is always very much appreciated. So let's get right into it with Canada versus Switzerland, this pre-tournament game that they played, ahead of the World Juniors. It's a sort of a preparation tournament. They're going to play three preparation matches, at least Team Canada will. And this first one against Switzerland, they won that game 6-0 against the Swiss national team, with Connor Bedard being by far the best prospect on the ice. He tallied 3 assists, including an absolute world-class backhand pass behind the back to Shane Wright for a tap in on the far post. Is that typical sort of Patrick Kane, William Nylander sort of play where the player drives behind the net, fakes as if they're going to go around the net, but then passes it short side on the backhand. Connor Bedard was able to sprint into the offensive zone and pull off that play in tight to find Shane Wright on the near post for a tap and goal. Bedard had 3 assists and assisted on both goals by Shane Wright. Shane Wright had 2 goals and 1 assist in that game. And the other player on that line was Brennan Othman, who scored a goal. So let's break down the lines, actually. So the first line was Brennan Othman, Shane Wright at center, Connor Bedard on the right wing. This is going to be the main offensive weapon for Team Canada. This is going to be sort of their nuclear bomb offensively that's going to sort of push them through a lot of these teams that are in higher end. Then their second line was Adam Fantilli, Logan Stankoven, and Dylan Gunther. Now, this line had a quiet night offensively, but they didn't concede much defensively either. I think Logan Stankoven's presence on that line, the intensity that he brings to that line, is going to help them a ton moving forward. And in terms of, being able to dominate teams down low on the forecheck, they're going to be sort of that forechecking line. Fantilli and Stankoven especially are going to be working really well off each other and on the forecheck. And Gunther's the type of guy who's going to find space off the puck and wire pucks in. So I think that combination works really well. Then the third line was really impressive for me in this game. It was Zach Dean, Nathan Gaucher, and Joshua Roy. So Zach Dean was a first-round pick of the Vegas Golden Knights. He's paired with Nathan Gaucher, who was a first-round pick of the Anaheim Ducks, and Joshua Roy, who's played in this tournament before and was a fifth-round pick by the Montreal Canadiens. Now, Roy is one of the best players at finding space off the puck, at always being in the right place at the right time on this Canada lineup. He's consistently going to find space and make plays in the offensive zone just by being very sneaky and offensively gifted. You add that to Nathan Gaucher's ability to protect pucks, to play the short passing game, to his ability to find passing lanes under sticks and all that. That's going to pair really well with Joshua Roy. And then Zach Dean's a high-end playmaker as well. So I think both of them are going to be feeding Joshua Roy a lot. It helps also that Nathan Gaucher has a goal-scoring touch as well. He's got a heavy shot. So I think that combination is going to work really well off each other. They did in this game. They scored 2 goals to sort of start the game for Canada. They anticipated each other's routes really well, read each other's decisions really well on the ice, and they played their checking role to perfection. They were really dominant on the forecheck. So that line is going to be one of the sleepers in this tournament. A line that's really underrated, but it's going to do a lot of the heavy work for Team Canada. I think they're going to work really well off each other and stick together as a line moving forward. And then the fourth line was Reed Schaefer, Caden Bankier, and Zach Osipchuk. Now, Osipchuk is a former second round pick of the Ottawa Senators. Reed Schaefer is a first rounder of this past draft by the Edmonton Oilers, and Caden Bankier was a third round pick. Now, these three guys, there's a lot of defensive value, in these three guys on the fourth line, but you've also got three guys who can shoot the puck really well. Now, I'm not sure who's going to be the playmaker on this line. I didn't see enough of them to be able to sort of break down what each player's sort of niche is going to be on that line, but I'm guessing that Ostapchuk is going to pick up that role because I think he has the best playmaking touch out of the three. Schaefer's playmaking is near non-existent in my opinion. Bankier's is sort of below average, but Ostapchuk at least has sort of a slightly above average playmaking touch. So I think he's going to be the one sort of finding them in soft ice and contributing to them, scoring goals and all that. But again, a lot of defensive value on this fourth line. They're going to work off each other a lot in terms of suppressing offensive chances for the opponents and doing a good job of that. Then we go to the defensive core for Team Canada in this game. We had Ethan Del Mastro and Olin Zellweger. Now, Zellweger, as I predicted, it was the top power play quarterback in this game, and will probably be for the rest of the tournament. He looked absolutely great in this game, and I think that Ethan Del Mastro complements him really well and allows him to drive up the ice in possession. He allows him that sort of liberty, that freedom to jump into the rush, create offensively, while Del Mastro sort of shuts it down defensively. But what's also good about Ethan Del Mastro is he also does have that offensive touch. So he's able to make plays. He has great hands, that he can use in the offensive zone. He walks the blue line pretty well. But I think Del Mastro is mainly going to be sort of manning a defensive role on that pairing. Then we go to Nolan Allen and Brandt Clark. In my opinion, Brandt Clark was the second best defenseman in this game after Zellweger. I think he made no mistakes, in the minutes I saw of him. He contributed to the score sheet with an assist, and overall he just looked really solid and was defending the rush really well, especially. And then you go to Kevin Korchinski and Jack Mateer as the third pairing. Now, I'm not sure what to make of this pairing. For me, Korchinski's improved in the WHL this season. He's shown some improvements, some strides in his game. And Mateer, for me, is a really sort of fail-safe type defender who, sort of like Del Mastro's role is going to be on that first pair. He's really going to sort of sit back and sort of prevent any major blunders from happening when Korchinski flies up the ice. But then finally, we've got Thomas Milic, who was in net for this game. He got the shutout. He wasn't really heavily tested, but he wasn't really snoozing in net either. He was aware and calm. He kept his team in the game, which is what you expect from a player, from a goaltender on Team Canada, for a team that's this dominant. And Benjamin Gaudreau was backing him up. I think that Gaudreau is going to be starting next game, most likely just to sort of see what he looks like. So it's going to be interesting to see how those two goaltenders compare. But so far, I've been impressed with Milic. He had a really good game and was very composed in net. So you look a bit further at the score sheet. So Joshua Roy had a goal and an assist. Same thing for Nathan Gaucher. Both of them started off the score sheet for Team Canada. And Zach Dean had an assist on each of those goals. So he had 2 assists in this game. Zellweger had a goal. Brandt Clark had an assist. And Dylan Gunther was the only sort of productive member of that second line who he got 2 power play assists in this game. But moving on to Switzerland's side, for me, the player I was, looking forward to look at in this game was Leon Bichsel, a first-round pick of the Dallas Stars. Bichsel was a very weird one for me in this game. He didn't really seem to be very clear on what type of defenseman he wanted to be. There were a couple times where he jumped into the rush, but then he seemed to pull back and hesitate. And other times where he tried to play hard in his own zone, it caused a penalty for his team. He took himself out of position a couple times. So I don't think, Bichsel is very clear yet on what his path to the NHL is. I think he's sort of clear on what his strengths are. His skating's really good. He uses it really well. He's got a heavy shot, all that. But I'm just not sure if he knows what the thing that's going to take him to the NHL will be yet. And that's sort of a work in progress. But again, he's in his draft plus 1 year. He's a young player, got a lot of runway to improve. And he's already one of the most utilized player on the Swiss under-20 team. So there's a lot of room for improvement. But that's going to be it for our first segment about the Canada versus Switzerland preparation game. Now we're going to go into my breakdown of the standout players from the 2022 World Junior A Challenge right after these messages.
Do you like betting?
BetOnline.net is your number one source for any wager that interests you. From the NFL to the NBA to the MLB, and even NCAA football, UFC, golf, anything you like, they have you covered. You can find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in depth analysis on every game on their website or app. They're, of course, a great source for all of your sports wagering information with live betting so you can keep up with bets as they unfold. They've got up to the minute scores for every sport out there. They're the fastest and easiest way to check in on all of your favorite games and events. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. Bet online, where the game starts. All right, moving on to the 2022 World Junior A Challenge. Now, this is a tournament for under 19 prospects, so prospects who are 18 years old or younger, and it's mainly for those who didn't make the cut for the World Juniors. So, Team USA won gold over Canada East in this tournament, and Flyers prospect Alex Bump scored the game winner for Team USA as they took the game 5-2. They scored an empty netter once it was 4-2, to sort of seal the deal. But Alex Bump wasn't really a standout for me in this tournament. That was his only goal, his only point in this tournament. I want to start it off by talking about Cole Knuble for Team USA. So we're going to start with a couple of USA players and move our way down to Canada and Sweden. So Cole Knuble for me, he's a 2023 re-entry prospect, so he's passed over in the entire 7 rounds of the 2022 NHL draft and is eligible for 2023 as his second year of draft eligibility. So he had 3 goals, 6 assists for 9 points in 6 games played. He was Team USA's go-to guy in this tournament. If they were leading by a goal, if they were trailing by a goal, if they needed someone on the power play, on the penalty kill, you name it, he was out there. He was doing the work. A big issue in his game was that he didn't really have a lot of playmaking elements to his game. That's one of the main things that caused him to get passed over in 2022. But this year, he's really added a lot of playmaking elements to his game, a lot of short range passing, a lot of that stuff. And it's been really impressive to see the growth in his game. He's always been a really good net front presence. He's always been really good along the boards, but he's added some open ice skill. He's added those playmaking elements. And that's probably going to be the difference that makes him a draft pick this year. So it's going to be impressive to sort of see him go about the season. He's been really good in the USHL, so it's just a matter of time before he grows into himself and adds some tools to his game. He's already on the path there, so really impressive stuff from him. Then we go to Sam Rinzel, the 25th overall pick in the 2022 NHL draft by the Chicago Blackhawks. He's a 6'4" right-handed defender. He had a goal and 4 assists for 5 points in 6 games in this tournament. And I mean, you rarely see 6'4" defensemen with his level of raw skill. His skating is really good. The way that he takes pucks mid stride and sort of makes plays at top speed, that's really outstanding. The issue with Rinzel is that his game is still very, very raw. So even in this tournament where he was dominant against his age group and players that are younger, there were still some decision-making issues both on and off the puck that sort of made me want more from him. He's got a lot of upside though, so it's going to be interesting to see him go about it in the next few years and sort of improve his game. Then we go from Rinzel to another defenseman of Team USA, and Andrew Strathman. He is a left-handed defenseman that's eligible for the 2023 NHL draft. He only had 1 goal, no assists in 6 games, but in my opinion, he was one of the best defensemen in Team USA's team. And overall in this tournament, he was tremendous on rush defense. He was, preventing opponents from setting up, from gaining the offensive zone in control. He was shutting down opponents left and right, and doing a really great job of being aware of who the threat is off the rush. On top of that, he showed a lot of intelligence, a lot of energy offensively. He was hitting seams consistently. He was timing his support runs to sort of come into pockets of space with speed differentials in order to close down on the net with purpose. So I really liked what I saw from him, but it really needs to reel in the energy sometimes. He does tend to push the pace a lot, but I want to see him sort of slow down the play and show a bit more timing in terms of his overall game, in terms of not always trying the most outlandish and daring things on the ice, but just defaulting to safe plays from time to time. But I really like him, and he's sort of stood out for me, and I sort of start to have the feeling that he might be worth a second-round pick in the 2023 NHL draft. Then we move on to Canada West. Now, Canada West made its way to the semifinals, lost to Canada East, who they had a goaltender who just stood on his head and made every save possible. But They had the best scorer, the best point scorer in this tournament, which was Aiden Fink, who's eligible for the 2023 NHL draft. Now, he led the whole tournament in points with 5 goals, 7 assists for 12 points in 6 games. He was too quick, too energetic, too smart for his opponents every night. You rarely see the level of offensive intelligence and maturity that he displayed in this tournament from a draft eligible prospect, much less of draft eligible prospect who's playing in the AJHL. It's a tough league to scout because of how porous defenses tend to be in that league, and especially since Fink plays for the Brooks Bandits, who are the top team in the AJHL. But Fink has so many pro habits. I mean, he's leading the Bandits right now and leading the AJHL overall with 26 goals, 41 assists for 67 points in 33 games. So he's over 2 points per game right now in the AJHL. And I'll definitely be looking at more tape of his during the holidays. But from what I saw from him in this tournament, he looks like a top 50 prospect in this draft. But again, he's 5'9". He's playing in the AJHL, so he might get overlooked. But I think his value is really high. He could be one of those guys that, cements his place in the top 50 by the time the year is done, because what he's doing in the AJHL right now and what he did at this tournament, not just in terms of the production, but just his overall game, the habits, the maturity, the intelligence, the delay game. There are so many sort of layers to his game that I really like that I'm starting to think he's definitely worth a top 50 pick. And then finally, we'll end it with Otto Stenberg, a player who's already in my first round for this 2023 NHL draft. The viewings I had of him in this tournament made me just more comfortable with keeping him in my first round. He looked like a pro amongst 18-year-olds. The pace of play that he plays with, the intelligence and the ability to hit pucks in stride and not sort of slow down to pick them up. It's very sort of, he looks like a professional player out there. I loved his habits in all 3 zones as well. I love this playmaking touch in this tournament, even though he only had 3 points in the tournament. I think he could have had a lot more with more clinical teammates. I mean, he was finding seams really well. Every time he got the puck, he had his next play in mind and a good idea of what the best way was to execute it. So that really helped him a lot in this tournament. He was proactive with his puck touches and almost constantly knew what to do with the puck once he had it. So really sort of polished game that's definitely worth a first round look in this draft. I don't think he's going to be a top 15 pick. Definitely not as high on him as I was at the start of the year, but he's definitely worth a first rounder in my opinion. But that's a breakdown of the standouts for the 2022 World Junior A Challengers. Now we're going to go into why Juraj Slafkovsky was benched in his last game and what's going on his side right after these messages. All right, so to finish off this episode, I wanted to talk about Juraj Slafkovsky's struggles as of late. Now, he had a very poor game against the Arizona Coyotes and got benched for a while, for the Montreal Canadiens. He ended the game with the worst overall impacts for the Canadiens and the worst defensive impact by far in terms of micro stats. Analytically on paper, it was horrible. I'll talk about it more in detail here. So he turned over the puck a lot of times. He got caught with his head down on a couple of hits, and overall, he was struggling to sort of string together plays. He didn't pass the eye test. He was really rough to watch, but if you look at the stats on the surface, if you just look at the stats that's available on the NHL website, for example, 1034 of ice time in this game. He took 1 penalty, was on the ice for a goal against, and he didn't take a single shot on goal. In fact, he only has 1 shot in his last 3 games, and he's pointless in those 3 games. So been pretty rough for him on the surface score sheet. But then you look at the advanced stats, the on-ice play driving metrics. In his game versus Arizona, Slafkovsky was on the ice for 6 shot attempts for in those 10 minutes. So only 6 shot attempts for and 20 against. In terms of shots on goal, 3-4, 14 against in that game. And in terms of expected goals, this one's the most egregious. He almost had 2 full expected goals against when he was on the ice versus only 0.24 expected goals for. So his team was controlling only 10% of the expected goal share when he was on the ice. Which was sort of about 50% worse than anyone else on the team on average. So he was also on the ice for 8 high danger chances against and only 1 for his team. So 8-1 high danger chances in favor of the other team when he was on the ice. That's just, the play driving metrics were horrible in this game. He had by far the worst relative impact on shot attempts, shots on goal, expected goals, scoring chances. Basically every play driving metric you can think of, he had the worst relative impact. So impact compared to his teammates. In short, he had a terrible game individually, and it hurt his team a lot when he was on the ice. Why did that happen? Well, sometimes bad games happen. Some games, Slafkovsky's driving the bus first line. He's carrying the puck up the ice, winning back pucks in the offensive zone, and just leading the forecheck. This was just not one of those games. But the thing with Slafkovsky is that he works off confidence. So when he took a big hit from Shane Gostisbehere in the second period, after working extensively between games with Habs training staff to keep his head up and avoid getting caught off guard like that, that hit just seemed to shake his confidence in his abilities. And what happened at that point is he started second doubting a lot of his decisions. He started taking extra split seconds to make plays. And that in the NHL is a death sentence. As soon as you start, taking an extra second to make plays, that's the difference between success and failure. The NHL, NHL hockey is measured in milliseconds. So if you just take a tiny bit more time to make plays, your opponents, even the worst fourth liners in the NHL, are very good at playing instinctively, at playing quickly, and at closing down your passing lanes, your opportunities in a flash. So it was sort of an immediate issue. He was just getting read like a children's book, turnovers, all that stuff. So the lack of confidence really made him struggle a lot in that game, and then he got benched, and that's sort of where the cycle started. So he got benched because he was performing poorly, because he was lacking confidence. But the benching is causing him to lack confidence, and that becomes sort of a circular issue for his team. He's struggling to string together plays. When he does get out there, it's a 30-second shift. He doesn't have much time to sort of do what he wants to do. So he tries to overthink it and make sure that he makes the right play. It doesn't work out. Sits back for another 5-10 minutes. So it was really sort of difficult for him to get his groove after he started getting benched more and more. And at one point, he just didn't hop on the ice for a good solid 10-15 minutes of a period. So just the fact that he's going through this season for the Montreal Canadiens, while players like Yoel Armia, like Mike Hoffman, Josh Anderson, all these wingers who are struggling to perform, struggling to produce, are still getting those opportunities regularly. You can add Jonathan Drouin to that list. It speaks to sort of the expectations put upon Slafkovsky in this season. I think that what's expected of him is that if he's not producing offensively, that he contributes defensively. He's been doing a decent job of that on and off. But for me, Slafkovsky just strikes me as a type of guy who's going to be leading your forecheck, to be winning puck backs along the boards. I mean, he got kicked off the power play as well. I mean, he for the thing that made him so good for the Canadians in a sort of recent 4 or 5 game stretch before this 3 game drought was the fact that he got bumped up to the top 6 because some wingers weren't cutting it and Brendan Gallagher got injured. So he was put in a situation that's new with teammates that are really good, and he sort of fed off that confidence. He felt like that was sort of an act of trust from his coaches, and you saw Slafkovsky sort of come out of his shell, try some more things, play more quickly, more instinctively, not overthink things. And on top of that, he got put on the top power play. He was playing on the top power play with Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield and all of these guys. He was playing as their net front presence. But the issue is, I don't think any individual player is going to change anything about that power play system. The Habs have 2 set plays right now to get in the offensive zone. Only 2 set plays to get in the offensive zone. Both of them are very predictable. And when they finally do end up getting in the offensive zone, let's say by some miracle they win an offensive zone faceoff, or cut through a defender and get it in control into the offensive zone. Well, at that point they've got 2 set plays. They've either got the Nick Suzuki wrister from the right half wall, or they've got the Cole Caulfield one-timer from the left half wall. So both of their set plays end up with shots from the outside. There's no place to play the puck down low, to get puck touches around the net and that kind of thing. It's really just Suzuki and Caulfield. So when Slafkovsky is put in that situation where he's the net front presence in a system where both set plays end up with shots from the outside, there's only so much that Juraj Slafkovsky could do. So he got bumped from the first power play down back to the second power play. Now and against Arizona, he didn't play on the power play at all. So it was just very difficult for him to get his groove on when he had so many different things working against him, and on top of that, he was sort of losing that confidence. But the way to help Slafkovsky gain his confidence back isn't by minimizing his ice time and sheltering him. It's by throwing them out there, and especially for a team like Montreal that has nothing to lose, that has stakes in this upcoming draft in terms of the lottery. I mean, what do they have to lose in terms of letting Slafkovsky just run the show and regain his confidence by his play on the ice? But it's still sort of interesting to see that Juraj Slafkovsky hasn't been able to sort of grasp his chance properly, despite the fact that they've got Brendan Gallagher injured and at least 4 or 5 wingers right now who aren't producing up to par. But there's a lot of time, a lot of runway for his development, and usually players of his size take more time to develop. We've seen it with Tage Thompson before, a player who went from looking like a bust to right now being second in the NHL in goal scoring. So sometimes it takes time with some prospects, and I'm hopeful that Slafkovsky is going to be able to turn this ship around with enough time, with enough confidence, and enough coaching on and off the ice. But that's going to be it for today's episode. Thank you very much for listening all the way to the end. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe. And if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platforms, make sure to make us your first listen of the day. For your second listen of the day, make sure to check out Locked On Sports Today. They're a great source for all your information that you need on all of your favorite leagues, from NFL to NBA to NHL, all that stuff. They're going to keep you updated and make sure you're the smartest person at your water cooler when you're talking sports with your colleagues. Now, this has been Locked On NHL Prospects with Hadi Kalakesh, and hope you tune in next time.